Hey guys, welcome back to Maelstrom Gaming Studios. I'm Craig, and today we are going to go over another Tyranid tier ranking. Now, it's been a little bit since I've done this, but I do like to do one every time there is a significant change. And about a little over a month ago, we had the Pariah Nexus Balanced Data Slate. Huge shakeups for the Tyranids, so I figured I've played a bunch of games now, a lot of games now, since that's changed. I think I have a good understanding of how things have shaken out. We're going to talk about them in a tier ranking today. Big changes, but I'm excited to explain why I put where I did. So if that sounds good, do like and subscribe to stay updated on all of our content here at Maelstrom Gaming Studios. Members, thank you so much for supporting us. You can maybe tell through the past couple videos we've had some upgrades. We upgraded the dice cam twice now, so big improvements. Got to return the one, brought a new one back, and you'll notice this camera might be a little bit more improved. We're just doing a slow, broad change to it. Thank you to you guys to allow us to keep doing that. And thank you to today's channel sponsor, Into the AM, but more on them later. We've got a lot of changes that happened to the Tyranids and to the general play of Warhammer 40k 10th edition. New points, that was a big one. Tyranids, we didn't really have too many, if any, point changes. I think the Neurolictor went up. That's about it. Balanced Data Slate, though, that's where we got our bread and butter changes. There were a lot of profile changes, some keyword changes, additions, and things like that. Some rule changes in terms of, the stratagem changes affecting the Hive Tyrants is fantastic. Swarmlord got a nice change with that stuff. But yeah, big changes there, and it's all just been great for the Tyranids. I think our win rate's gone up maybe 5-6% depending on the stats you look with these changes. So thank you, GW. We desperately needed them, and I feel much better playing Tyranids with them. So starting us off, we still have some bottom tier units that are just don't bother really with them. And these, not necessarily in a particular order, but from the best of the bottom feeders to the worst, we have the Tyrannocyte, followed by the Sporocyst, the Harpy, the Hive Crone, the Mucolid, and the Spore Mines. Now, let's explain a little bit about these. First off, Spore Mine units, don't ever pay for these ones. Your best bet is to spawn them from something like a Biovore or the Sporocyst for the Mucolid. The Flyers, GW, they've clearly made it known that they do not want Flyers to be a regular part of 40k 10th edition. They're trying to phase those out, and to do that, they are making them way more expensive than they should be for their power level. I understand it. They probably should have never brought them into the game to begin with, but that was a whole different 40k back then in 6th and 7th edition. Sporocyst can be fun, but again, not really needed. You just take a Biovore and it can do everything this thing can. I mean, not exactly, but it's just not great. And the Tyrannocyte has fallen down to the bottom feeders. The main thing that I put it down here is because GW have gone out and made a clarification. Technically, it was in a Space Marine FAQ, but I believe it applies to everybody, is that you can no longer rapid ingress turn 1 if you have the ability to deep strike turn 1. And that was a real neat trick that the Tyrannocyte could do. The only neat trick the Tyrannocyte had is you could rapid ingress something like Old One Eye or Screamer Killer, turn 1, have it there, and then be ready to do something right away. You can still come in turn 2 with it, or turn 1 with it if you go first. You can still rapid ingress with it turn 2 or 3 if you really want to. But it's 115 points. The bugs it can carry are okay, and really they're probably better off just on the ground. So it's fun to use, but I kind of stay away from it. It's just my thought. You can strategic reserve for free pretty much, so just do that instead. Now, let's get into Tier 4. Tier 4, again, a lot of changes here, but a lot of these units are sort of the same ones. First off, we have the Ripper Swarm. Huge tank down for the Ripper Swarm. Obviously, OC0 units can't do actions, so this thing really has a very little purpose in the game. Yes, you can still take 1 to do engage in all fronts or behind enemy lines, or there's one other one I can't think of at the moment, but I know it's 3 of them. But it's 25 points. Instead of paying 25 points for Ripper Swarm, just pay 25 more points and take a Biovore. Really, maybe I should probably put Ripper Swarms even lower. I think the only reason they aren't as low as they are is because you can do some shenanigans in Assimilation Swarm with them, and that's pretty much it. The Norn Assimilator, I'm putting it down here in the struggling units. Maybe that's a little harsh, and you guys can let me know in the comments if that's a little harsh. But outside of Synaptic Nexus, I just don't like this thing. It kind of hits hard. It can crack a tank open. Yes, the extra strength is nice. Its smaller Talon attacks are at strength 10 now, which is good. Its big punchy claws are at strength 13, which is great against a land raider or something like that. But I just don't find this thing to be as effective as it could be for its point value. Maybe this is a little harsh and it should be at the bottom of our next tier, but I am putting him down here. He has seen a nice ability or glow up in Crusher Stampede, so you could argue him there with the ability to move through walls, but still, I don't know. I would kind of just want to take Old One Eye for about half the cost and the same sort of lethality that he's got. Screamer Killer, another melee bug. You've seen a theme here. I love the Screamer Killer model. I think they're a fantastic unit, but they just are a few points too expensive. 145 points. They have great potential, but they don't have anything fancy for durability. 2-up save is good, but it's nothing. An anti-tank gun still looks at it the same way. They just tend to be a distraction Carnifex, and they're not durable enough to be a long-lasting distraction effects. You start them on your board, maybe you rapid ingress one of them, but they'll die. They'll die to 2 las cannons pretty easy, so it's unfortunate. I think just drop 20 more points off them, put them in line with with a regular Carnifex, or really honestly the regular Carnifex could go down 5 points, drop these guys down 15 points, and they'll maybe see them bump up a tier. But right now for 145 points, I would take a Harsfex over this thing every time, or a Moloch at that point. We then have a Turvagon also down here. The Turvagon is one of my favorite models in the Tyranid range. However, she didn't really see any nerfs. She actually got a point decrease. I believe one of the only point decreases we got. But her usefulness is significantly decreased. So she didn't get much changes, but the Unending Swarm detachment got significant nerfs. The ability for Gaunts to be absolute walls of units, reviving them, doing actions while in melee, all moving and advancing and doing actions, all of that kind of went out the window for Termagant swarms, which, you know, supporting those was their big thing. On top of that, you'll probably be playing swarms in Invasion Fleet because they have the strat to revive 2 units, which does the Turvagon's job. And on top of that, the Hive Tyrant now gives assault and lethal to units within range, which is better than the Turvagon. Yes, it can't heal, but for, you know, a 0 CP strat, you could heal 2 units instead of 1 unit. Turvagon kind of got lost in the changes here. It's unfortunate for the Termagants and Unending Swarm, but that's where I'm putting it. Next, I've got Ranged Warriors. I hate Ranged Warriors with a passion. They are useless at their job, which is shooting. They can be nice little Synapse bubbles. 65 points is fine. Be a little Synapse unit. Support in Synapse ways with, you know, the OC or Battle Shock buffs. They have an amazing ability. Fallback, shoot, and charge built in is fantastic, but they also don't hit very hard in melee either, so it's just kind of bleh for them. Quite sad, I have to say. We have Toxicrin. Toxicrin is a decent model in terms of its actual profile. It still will struggle with the whole tentacle thing that you can technically be seen if you can hit the tentacles, and for that it will always be in the struggling unit because unless you slap one on the table without tentacles, it's just not going to do what you want it to do because it's going to get shot by anything in the board. So Toxicrin will be down there. We have the 2 Titans. I love the Titans, specifically the Hierophant has a special place in my heart, as you can see right here. I love him. I'll use him whenever I get the chance. But he does just not do what other Titans can do. His big, punchy, stabby melee is, you know, D6 plus 1, AP minus 2 attacks. They're really pathetic. His shooting is only strength 10. He will dominate against regular units, but if you put him up against another Titan or another heavy hitter, he's not going to do so well against that. Harridan kind of plays a weird role as a sort of flyer, super heavy thing. You can make some shenanigans work with it, but it's similar to the Hierophant. It just doesn't do what it needs to do for its point value necessarily. And then we have Hive Guard. I'm not going to put them in bottom tier. I think they are okay. The changes to, what are they called? The changes to indirect has actually, in a way, helped them because, yes, indirect can never hit better from 4s, but they never really had a chance to do that anyway. So, in terms of the overall scale of how well they are at indirect, they kind of got a little bit of a buff, but really, they're not fantastic. Now, before we go on to the tier 3, our average units, let's talk a little bit about today's channel sponsor, Into the AM. Yes, Into the AM is back. They are a regular channel sponsor here at the channel. You can see this awesome graphic tee. I've got this sweet octopus. Octopus are one of the coolest animals in the world, in my opinion. I don't think they're from this world, but that's for another story. So I love them. Into the AM has got a wide range of graphic tees that are premium material, high quality, comfy, and they fit very well. Everything you want in a t-shirt and a great price. Can't leave that part out of it. But if these graphic tees are something you don't really like the flashy look of it, you can get a plain tee with a logo of theirs, without a logo of theirs. You can get sweatshirts, you can get pants, shorts, polo shirts if you want something nice, long sleeves, anything you could think of you need as a guy. Girls, you can still take advantage of the shirts if you want, but I know my audience is 98.8% men, so catering to you guys. Yeah, check them out. Use my link in the description down below. If you don't put in code MGS10, it lets you know that we sent you. We get a little bit of a kickback. They get a great deal, or they get a sale, and you guys get a great deal. So thank you to Into the AM for sponsoring today's video, and now let's get back to the tier ranking. So we have tier 3, our average units. These units, I think you could do just fine using them in a whole host of different games and detachments. Maybe they have a really niche role in someone's list doing something, you know, but in general, outside of some niche roles, these guys I think are just kind of average. Starting it off, we have Zoanthropes. And yes, Zoanthropes got a nice buff in the fact that they can be joined by a Neurotyrant. However, I still do struggle to find them useful in the fact that they are a significant, especially the Neurotyrant, a significant point chunk. They're probably 1/6 of your army for that whole powerhouse, and they are slow. Movement 5, I recommend strategic reserving them. However, when you do that, maybe they obliterate something, but they are stuck there. Your opponent, if they're smart, will just stay away from them, keep out of line of sight, or if they have any decent anti-heavy infantry guns, they'll kill them. They've got a 4-up save, which does really well against some of the low volume of shot stuff, but a lot of armies have strength 5, you know, AP 1, damage 1, or damage 2 guns, and that just obliterates these guys. So they are cool, they hit pretty hard, but they are too fragile, in my opinion, to be anywhere higher than right here. Honestly, I could even see them being a little bit lower than this, but they're average for me right now. Following up those guys, we have the Gene Stealers and the Broodlord. I do really like these guys. They got a fantastic buff with the whole Synapse giving them extra strength. I think in Vanguard Onslaught, I would put these guys way higher than that. In every other detachment, they are fine, in my opinion. They can hit hard. Their strength is still a little low, and they are a little squishy, so they will struggle to trade up. Unless you get some nice dev wound rolls, then maybe, you know, they can trade up a little bit higher. But again, outside of Vanguard Onslaught, when you have movement manipulations with them, the advanced charge and special strats to protect them, they do just get gunned down, and they're not really that great in melee. A 5-up invone is a 5-up invone no matter what's really shooting at them. So I like them. They hit hard, but outside of Vanguard Onslaught, I really would not touch them all that much. Same with the Broodlord. The Psychophage, however, he is a perfectly average unit, and I actually really like him. You could argue put him higher, but I'm going to leave him right here. The thing about the Psychophage is, the best way I can describe it is, he is tanky enough to not die from just some random shooting, but he is also useless enough to the point where he is something you want to do actions with. In Pariah Nexus, we're doing a lot of actions this partial edition. You're going to need some units that either sit on an objective or sit in a terrain feature or go to the flank, and they have to survive a turn of your opponent's. A lot of our things, like our Gaunts, are going to die to a stiff breeze if they come into that. A Psychophage is cheap and useless, where you're okay if he's not doing anything, he's just doing an action. But being basically a Rhino with 5-up feel no pain and some potential for fighting back, he's perfect for the job. He's absolutely perfect for it. So a lot of my lists, I've been including 1, 2, maybe 3 Psychophages in the list because they are just fantastic for that role. And if they're not doing an action, or even if they are doing an action, they've got a feel no pain aura, which is nothing to slouch at. So I like them a lot there. Winged Prime. Winged Prime himself is pretty meh. The whole AP -1 in melee is not great. Damage 2 is fine. The strength is fine. The attacks is fine. It's got a good ability, but he is just on his own pretty meh. Adding him to a unit of melee warriors, or even ranged warriors if you really want to, gives the unit of warriors a significant increase with the sustained and whatever enhancement you put on them. But the Prime alone by himself is just whatever in terms of a unit. So he's down here. We got Barb Gaunts next. I love Barb Gaunts. They do have a great ability at the whole slowing thing. They can, if you bring a big block of them, they're only 110 points for a big block, and they can put out an insane amount of firepower if they shoot at something to trigger their blast. Yes, you could stick something with them or take an invasion fleet like a Tyrant, give them lethal hits. You could have those lethal hits trigger early and just dump an insane amount of AP0 firepower into a unit. It can be fun. It can be a lot of fun to roll that kind of dice. I think last time I did it into a unit of 10, I rolled, 67 hits or something like that with the whole sustained and stuff. It's a lot of fun. Other than that, they're just cheap OC1 bodies, 2 wounds, so you got to put a little bit of firepower back into them. But yeah, 55 points, can't really go wrong with them. Termagants, I think, are actually one of the bigger losers in the whole Pariah Nexus changes. They lost all of their shenanigans they could do with actions. Now, those shenanigans are still in as some of these, whether the tertiary mission or the mission rule, but they're not consistent. So you can't rely on them to be doing something every time. Just some missions, they might come up. So from more of a competitive standpoint, you don't want to rely on them potentially having that special rule and taking advantage of that. At 60 points, an OC2 body, I would way much rather take Hormagaunts at 65 points. They're way faster. They can actually do some threat work in melee, and they have advance and charge again for that speed. So it's way worth the 5 points. Their shooting is pretty meh. And if you want something cheap, I would even go as far to say Neurogaunts, which is our next unit. Neurogaunts, 45 points for 11 bodies at OC1. I've actually been starting to play around with a unit of 10 of these when I have nothing left in my list. And I just strategic reserve them onto a corner. They do an action, and then they hang out. It's 11 wounds, so your opponent can't just shoot a few bolters at them. They've got to actually dedicate a little bit of firepower to getting through all 11 of them. And again, they're 45 points. If they score you anywhere from 3 to 5 victory points throughout a game, then I'd say that's kind of worth the 45 points. And it takes away from some of your opponent's fire. Then in an average unit, we have a Trigon. I really like the Trigon. It's got a rare or only 3-inch deep strike ability. In Vanguard Onslaught, he shines. You can rapid ingress him and move really fast with the advance and charge. Great stratagems to amp up his damage output and his survivability. So I would put him maybe up a tier in a Vanguard Onslaught list, but again, for everybody else, I think he's right here. He's got a great ability, great potential in melee. He is not that durable, so he will die. I'd say he's perfectly average, really. Speaking of perfectly average again and big monsters, we have a Norn Emissary. I love the Norn. I do. But yes, they have great strength 10 attacks and strength 8 attacks, which is fine. It's fun. You can now hurt vehicles a little bit better, and you can hurt toughness 5 a little bit better, but still it's not a ton of damage output. And the OC 15 thing is nice. Your opponent, you might run into an opponent where they do realize they can't mess with it and they just claim an objective and it's theirs, and easy points there. But it's still a 275 point increase. I would personally rather invest that in some damage output rather than a Norn, though I think you can still play Norns and have fun with them and be semi-successful with them. We then have the Flying Hive Tyrant. Now, the Hive Tyrants, like I've said, have seen a substantial increase with their whole CP shenanigans now affecting every strat they want to use it on. The Flyers, again, a little bit better in Vanguard Onslaught because of the whole advance and charge thing. But outside of that, it's a cool melee threat and it does well, but it's got a big silhouette, so it's going to be harder to hide. And Hive Tyrants themselves are not that durable, so they really do want to be hiding until turn 2 or 3 or 4, where there's not as many threats on the table for them to fight with. Its psychic ability is fantastic. Unlike the Foot Tyrant, though, it's not reliable. I mean, on a 2+ it goes off, where the Foot Tyrant just always happens. So I don't like that ability, where I have played 5-round tournaments and rolled plenty of 1s. Plus, it takes damage when you roll one. So that part I don't like about it. I wish it just, you always got to do it. You always got to pick a unit to lose the attack. So between that and the giant silhouette of the Hive Tyrant, that's why it's down here. Now we have Carnifexes. Carnifexes are good. They're fun. If you take them with Old One Eye, they're fantastic in both melee and shooting. However, if you do not take them with Old One Eye, they really are a bit swingy. They have only hitting on 4s with their shooting. They got a whole bunch of guns. They've got a great surge ability. But again, the lack of weapon skill and ballistic skill on their own, I'm going to put them down here. But yeah, so that's that. With the Parasite, Parasite gains Synapse. It's fun to just zip around. Some people in Synaptic Nexus like putting the Relic for a -1 leadership bubble on them, flying into your opponent's lines, and then just shadowing the warping on the next turn. It can be fine. It can be fun. Outside of that niche build, though, I think you're better off just having other units than one of these guys, like a Lictor or Death Leaper or Neurolictor, than one of these. But it's not a bad unit. Lone Op with a fast move is powerful to have in the Codex, and in your army. I just not my favorite. We have Venomthropes. Venomthropes at one point were a bit higher. However, the Swarm lists have substantially died down with the changes to Unending Swarm. So these guys, their effectiveness is not nearly as great. Still, the stealth is fantastic with infantry. Not a lot of units have ranged ignoring modifiers. So taking Space Marines to hitting on 4s, or taking units that normally hit on 4s to 5s is good for the durability of your infantry units. Otherwise, gaining cover is great for everybody. Typically, your monsters are going to already have cover, but if they don't, then having them nearby just helps out the durability a bit. So I'm going to put them there. We have Tyrant Guard. Now, if you guys have been following my channel, you know I love Tyrant Guard, but that's only because I play them in Assimilation Swarm. Outside of Assimilation Swarm, they're here. Maybe in Assimilation Swarm, they're at the top of this list or the bottom of the next tier, because they are insanely durable. Toughness 8 with 4 wounds and a 3-up save. Yes, 3-up save kind of sucks, but 4 wounds is great. You can often get a feel no pain on them from a Psychophage, or if you're playing a different detachment like Invasion Fleet, you can do that. And specifically in Assimilation Swarm, bringing one of those back all the time is just nasty. Some armies can just clean them off the board, but if they can't dedicate their whole firepower to dealing with them, then they just start respawning and they have to do it again, and hopefully by then you've dealt with threats that lower that firepower. So I like them there. And then finally in this we have Von Ryan Leapers. Von Ryan Leapers, they're fine. Again, Vanguard Onslaught, they've got some good movement and stuff. Otherwise, they're good. You could take a unit of 3 just for screening out other opponents' infiltrating units or scouting units. They are perfect at killing those infiltrating and scouting units. Their profile stacks up perfectly to that. Outside of that, they don't hurt too hard. A bunch of attacks at strength 5, AP -1, 1 damage. fine. Anything that's really a melee threat is going to just shrug that off and punch them in the face and knock them over. So they have a niche role. If your opponent doesn't have anything that they can go after, they're kind of just action monkeys that move around, but that's good to have. So staying in the average units for them. Now we get into the fun stuff. These are the great units. These I expect to see in a wide variety of tournament lists, whereas the list below, you might see one or two of these picked apart, depending on more of a niche playstyle of the list. So, start of the great units, we have the Neurotyrant. I love the Neurotyrant. I really wanted to put it up one tier, but I want to keep that tier for just a few specific units. So, Neurotyrant's fantastic. The changes to Shadow and the Warp make this thing even more potent, because now with this, you'll always have them at a -1. But if they're near Synapse creatures, then that becomes a -2. And that's really tough for a lot of models to, or armies to pass a mass -2 leaderships, Battleshock tests. So I like them. Plus, with the Synapse changes, those little Synapse tokens are fantastic on things like, Carnifexes or Harusfexes or Hormagaunts or anything that is just going to be flying up the board and they want to hold on to that extra strength. Fantastic. Speaking of Hormagaunts, we have them right here. I love them. I love them more than Gargoyles, as you can see. They are way cheaper than Gargoyles, and with the changes to Battleshock actions and all of that, you don't really, you do want Gargoyles. They're still good, but a lot of lists don't need the Gargoyles. They just need the Hormagaunts to run around, do actions, screen your opponent. 65 points. You can really fit one of these guys in every single list. So I love them a lot. The strength 4, again, if I want to deal with some chaff cleaning, put them up to strength 4 with a Neurotyrant and just let them go to town. Then we have the Lictor. Great unit. Blown up. Melee beast. Free rapid ingress. I love them. I try to keep them in my midfields for a majority of the game, maybe doing actions or sitting on objectives where they're hopefully not going to be shot, so I just have them hanging around there. And then towards the late game, they can move on in and just rip some units apart. Ton of attacks at strength 7, AP -2, 2 damage. Give them Synapse, strength 8, AP -2, 2 damage is tearing apart Marines. So love those guys there. Then we do have Gargoyles, one of the old S tier units. They still have all their movement shenanigans. They can still have a potential 24-inch move throughout the turn. They can still move block your opponent. All of those things are still great. But at 85 points for a unit of these guys, I'm not, compared to Hormagaunts, I'm not as sold on taking them in every single list. Yes, I'll still try to take some in there. Try to keep a unit in if I can, but they're not as necessary as Hormagaunts are with the changes. And we got Death Leaper. A great unit. He's basically a super lictor, as you guys know. I love him. I try not to, I try to treat him like a lictor where he sits around a bit, maybe runs in to cause some extra Battleshock shenanigans with his leadership debuffing. And he's good in melee. I can't, he looks like he should be even better, but again, you can't rely on him to just wipe units out single-handedly. Smaller units, yes, but he's just a good little action monkey there. Now into some monsters. Maliceptor, fantastic. It's got great shooting. Strength 10, one of our fewer high strength weapons. So strength 10, AP -2, 3 damage with a healthy D6 plus 3 blast profile is great. Not only that, but this is one of our only non-character monsters. Maybe our only non-character monster with a 4-up invuln. I'm thinking about that. I think that's the case. So fantastic durability there at toughness 11, 4-up invuln, 14 wounds. As well as it can provide some substantial debuff to your opponent with the potential -1 to hit and wound bubble. So it's a nice package, and at 170 points, I'm so happy GW hasn't bumped these guys, because they're easily in a bracket where GW could say, oh yeah, people are always using Maliceptor, so let's bump them up 10 points. But I think they're perfect at 170 with just the threat they have, and the threat your opponent has to respect with them. Speaking of a threat your opponent has to respect, the Tyrannofex is back. Now, previously, it's always just been the Acid Spray as a threat, and the Acid Spray is a fantastic threat, especially if it's walking around with the Hive Tyrant. You can get, pseudo free Overwatch, Assault on your thing, so you can move quick and do some flaming Overwatch. But now, with the changes, the Rupture Cannon is just insane. The potential to do, 14 to 24 damage with your shots is just, you can have plenty. I've played in a tournament where throughout the course of the whole game, he's only done 10 wounds, or I've had games where he comes in and drops 5 vehicles in 5 turns. It is swingy with the fact that you have to hit, wound, get past an armor save, then roll the damage. It's a lot for just 2 dice to make it all the way through that. But the fact that he can do that because he hits on 3s, maybe 2s, maybe he has lethal hits. It's an insane strength, though. It's almost always going to be on 3s, maybe 2s with some various buffs. And then AP4 means your opponent probably getting a 5-up save at best, which is by no means a guarantee. It's more reliable to get those through than it seems like, and your opponent just has to respect it for the fact that if the dice go out of favor for them, they have a dead vehicle. So I love the Rupture Cannon. I have been actually taking one in pretty much every game, and it is just fantastic because even if it doesn't do the damage, it is a threat my opponent has to deal with. So I love it there. We have Pyrovore. Can't go wrong with the Pyrovores. They're 35 points. They turn off cover. You can strategic reserve one of them to do easy actions. They're durable enough to hold on to stuff. And if you play in Simulation Swarm, they're fantastic there too. So can't go wrong. Oh, and now now the Hive Tyrants can target them again for free Overwatch if you want. So love it there as well. Old One Eye. I've talked about Old One Eye a lot. Just a little wrecking ball. He's a little wrecking ball. He's great with Carnifexes. If you don't want to pay that substantial cost in Carnifex bodyguards, take him on his own. Take him in Synapse Nexus and give him the little Synapse token from the Neuro Tyrant, and he becomes an absolute menace to deal with. So even without that, he's still just a nice regenning thing. Your opponent has to dedicate a lot of firepower to him. If they don't, and they under-dedicate, then he will just keep reviving, because he's one of the few units in the game that revive in both players' command phase. So then we have Biovores. Biovores were an S tier unit. They have since dropped down to here. I still think they're a fantastic unit to bring. They're only 50 points now instead of 75. Yes, Spore Mines can only do 3 actions this game, but those are sometimes hard ones to do to actually maximize the points. So having him to do that is great. And if he's not, you can slow down people's movement because the hold can't start or end in advance within 6 inches of Spore Mines. You could shoot with him to try and fish for a few mortals to finish off a key unit, or just spawn Spore Mines and move them in to blow up and cause shenanigans like that. I still think they're a great include, especially at 50 points. We then have the Haruspex, which is an interesting model. So the Haruspex has a very, very potent damage output. 14 attacks with the Maw and 4 attacks with the big shoveling claws. Kind of low on the AP side, but with the sheer volume they get, that is okay. However, these things, for as durable as they look, are just glass cannons. I mean, it only takes maybe 3 las cannons to take them out. They have a 3-up save, no invuln, 14 wounds. They're just really relying on those wounds to allow them to hang around pretty long. They're fine again. I like them, but the main thing that keeps them up here is that they're only 125 points. And they have 3-up save. I don't know if I said that, so they're a little squishy there. Only 125 points, and with that, I'm going to keep them here because their potential is just so good that if your opponent doesn't deal with them, well, watch out. Oh, and they have a Precision Tongue, which is amazing. In case you haven't seen it on the channel, we've had a couple Precision Tongue character snipes, which can really throw the course of the game for a loop if one of those succeeds. We got a few more units. We're powering through here, guys. We've got the Neuro Tyrant. Sorry. We've got the Neurolictor, a unit I very much loved at the start of the edition. I brought 3 of them in every list. They did so much work for my army. Since then, they have seen a significant number of point hikes, where I believe they started at 65 points, and they are now all the way up to 90 points. Maybe you bring 1. I still think some lists will really benefit from having 1. 2 of them at 120 points is a significant point investment, though they have gained the Synapse keyword, so that is great. So if they're within 6 inches of an enemy unit, they can tell them to take a battle shock at -2, at -1, and if it's Shadow in the Warp, then it'll be at -2 if the Neurotyrant's there. So still, all in all, it's a good unit. You have to rely on the battle shocks failing, but the damage output that these guys bring, or the damage output they allow your army to put against the battle shock unit is fantastic. So I wish they went back down like 10 points. I really do. Now we have Swarmlord, who has seen a insane glow up. He has received one of the best buffs in the entire game of 40k. The Lord of Deceit ability, which is where if you are within 12 inches as an opponent, within 12 inches of Swarmlord, your stratagems just cost 1 CP all the time. That ability was specifically used for units that had the CP manipulation stuff. All of those units outside of one of them are not durable units. They're squishy stuff. The Space Wolves have Bjorn, the Fell-Handed. The Dreadnought character has his ability, which is fantastic. But so does Swarmy. And Swarmy is just a menace. If you play him with Tyrant Guard, he's even harder to dig out. I don't recommend bringing him with Tyrant Guard unless you're maybe playing a Simulation Swarm, because they are attacks and they don't do much outside of some detachments. And you really just want to take Swarmy, move him up the board, and sit in the corner, kind of in the midfield for the first few turns, and just put out that massive bubble. I mean, a 12-inch aura is a 24-inch diameter circle of your stratagem costs 2 CP there. It really, really messes with melee armies, which surprisingly Tyranids struggle a bit into melee armies because our melee is not as good as we want it to be. So, you know, going up against World Eaters, like, oh, I'm going to use this strat for -1 damage. No, you're not, because it's 3 CP. Or, you know, I'm going to heroically intervene, or I'm going to fight first, or I'm going to interrupt. Whatever the case is, 1 extra CP on especially the 2 CP strats is just a nightmare for some armies. So, love him now. And then Melee Warriors. I love Melee Warriors. Love them. I think they are fantastic in many lists. Synaptic Nexus they can be good in. Vanguard Onslaught, they are very powerful in that one as well. They gain the much needed mobility they need. And I mean, honestly, I'd take them in everything but Crusher Stampede, really. You can make them work in it. They just have the ability to trade up better than a lot of units in the Codex. Yes, they are glass cannons. They will die to a stiff breeze. But if you can keep them as a wave 2 or 3 unit that does the punching, 36 attacks with sustained hits, assuming you take the prime, rerolling 1 to hit, and then their AP2 twin linked gun or weapons at strength 6 now really allow them to trade up and just chop through a lot of enemy units. So love them there. Moloch saw a nice upgrade, gaining the Vanguard Onslaught keyword, or the Vanguard Invader keyword for Vanguard Onslaught. These guys are great. You can take 2 of them to Vanguard Onslaught. They just dump out mortal wounds, and against elite armies that may not have saves against mortal wounds, that's a tough thing to deal with. So Custodes, if they don't have the mortal wound buff, then watch out, because Molochs are here to deal with you. And if you ignore them, they're not bad at melee too. A whole bunch of AP2 attacks, damage 1 only, but AP2 attacks is nothing to slouch at. And finally, we have Raveners. Raveners are a nice little unit that you can toss into pretty much any list, regardless of detachment. Yes, they gain Vanguard Invader, but their ability to pop up, do an action, and if they survive, pop down, and then pop back up, go somewhere else, maybe do an action, is really nice to have. If your opponent knows what they're doing, they'll try to kill these things as quick as possible, because it could cripple your secondary game, but the flexibility they have is fantastic. So if you've been keeping tally, you will know who the last 2 units are that are in S tier. And that is the Exocrine and the Hive Tyrant, specifically the Foot Hive Tyrant. Talking about the Exocrine first, this thing remains one of the most points efficient damage dealers at range in any army. 135 points for now a strength 9 plasma cannon, AP 3, damage 3, D6 plus 3 blast 36-inch range. This thing has the potential to just wipe out squads of Terminators at ease or drop medium to light armored vehicles. It's a little swingy, and they also have a nice buff that allows anything they shoot, whatever target they shoot, anything else that shoots it gets the real ones to hit. So they're also just an insane damage increase or multiplier on your force to begin with. So they're nice. They're only toughness 10, 3-up save, 14 wounds. So anti-tank weapons do a pretty good job of popping these guys down. But I like to take 2 of them, you know, put 1 in strategic reserve, 1 on the table, depending on my opponent. So 1 is on the board as a threat to just whatever's coming up the board, and the other one can pop on and provide that much needed angle maybe you didn't have from your deployment zone. So we'll have Exocrines at 135 points. They're insane. You can't really go wrong with them. Unless I guess you're up against an all-night army, but no. Then we have the Walking Hive Tyrant, and the changes the Walking Hive Tyrant have got was something I was hoping for so long. Now that their CP stratagem works on any stratagem that reduces the cost of CP. No, not just battle tactic, any stratagem. That unlocks things for Synaptic Nexus and Assimilation Swarm and Vanguard Onslaught, who really didn't have, actually all of our detachments didn't have a lot of battle tactic ones. So we're quite limited here. Now, the Hive Tyrant is the best CP manipulator because it is not only our turn, but also our opponent's turn. So you can do a free offensive stratagem and a free defensive stratagem. That's like 2 extra CP a turn that no other army really can take advantage of like that. The Assault and Lethal combo it now also has in shooting is very good. You can turn things like Barb Gaunts and Termagants and even big things like Exocrines, giving them lethal on their first volley is fantastic. Assault, you need to be more mobile, have your Acid Spray Tyranno effects, or maybe you gotta really move those Exocrines to get into line of sight of something. Fantastic damage output for them. On top of that, he is a very potent melee threat. I personally like to take my Hive Tyrant with Lashwhip Bone Sword and the dual scything talons, so full melee build. You know, unless I'm playing my funny Assimilation Swarm list, I'll run him by himself. I'll run him up to a corner where he can pretty much help out a lot of units. And then turn 3 or so, I'll launch him into fighting. He's a good melee threat there. Still not super durable. Toughness 10, 2-up save, 10 wounds. Does not go a long way in terms of the damage, the lethality of 40k, but it's enough if you can protect him for the first few turns. So I love the Hive Tyrant now. It's fantastic. I personally love the Hive Tyrant more than the Exocrine, so maybe I should have swapped those two, but it is undeniable what the Exocrine brings to the table. So let's look at our overall ranking. You can see we have 2 S-tier units, 6 bottom feeders, a decent amount of great units, not too many units I say are really struggling right now. Really, I think every unit can work in the Codex, and even the ones I have in these struggling units, I think you can make them work if you really want to, but they're just not as easy, not as straightforward as some of the other ones. The average units, I can't really complain when they're just average, and the great units are awesome. We have some S-tier units, so I'm liking Tyranids the way they are right now. We can compare it to where they were before if you want. A couple units have fallen, a couple units have risen up a bit, but all in all, it's a great place for Tyranids to be in. We're by no means perfect, but our win rate is definitely heading towards 50%. I've had so much more fun playing Tyranids in this past month or so than I had previously. Between the previous edition of the Codex, did not like it. Pariah Nexus made it a lot more fun. I feel like I'm not having to work as hard to pull off the shenanigans I need to. I just have the damage or the lethality there. So I'm pretty happy. Hopefully you guys are seeing that too. Thank you, GW, for fixing your mistakes of the original Codex and helping us out. And that is pretty much all I have. So, is there something I missed here? Do you disagree with any of my placings significantly, or do you think I've got it pretty much on the nose? Let me know. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for Into the AM for supporting this channel. Go check them out. Use the link. Get a shirt that you've been looking for. They are great quality. There's a reason they're a regular sponsor for us, because we really enjoy them here. And we'll see you. And thanks again, and we'll see you next time here at Maelstrom Gaming Studios.